When you talk about India and Iran in World Kabaddi, you realize that you're talking about two of the big powerhouses in the sport. These are the two nations that have constantly tussled with each other on international stages, be it at the Asian Games, be it at the Kabaddi World Cup or the Dubai Masters. Wherever it is, you see these two teams tussling. So when they came into the men's Kabaddi final, we knew that this would be a close game. We knew there would be some hot-headedness on the mat. But what none of us expected was a 20-minute delay in the game with just maybe a little over a minute to go and the match eventually being suspended. In this video, I'm going to break down what exactly happened in the final minutes of the second half, which led to the game in Hangzhou being suspended. This was no ordinary pool match. This was the gold medal match. The winner of this game would go on either Iran would defend its gold medal or India would reclaim its gold medal, which Iran took away from them after 28 years of dominance at the Asian stage. With under a minute and a half to go, the scores were tied at 28-28. It was a very, very close match with Iran leading for most parts of the first half, but India wrestling back control in the final couple of minutes before the halftime whistle went off. So in the second half, with under a minute and a half left, Pawan went into raid. The scores were tied on 28-28. It seemed like while he was going into the right corner, Amir Hossain Bastami had sort of stepped off the mat. He didn't take any further part in the tackle, but there were four Iranians around Pawan anyway who were looking to dash him out. Pawan was dashed out, but the point of contention was about whether all four had gone with him. Now, if you look at Kabaddi, the most sort of long-standing element in the sport now is the Pro Kabaddi League, which is the domestic private franchisee-based tournament that happens in India. In the Pro Kabaddi League, there was a rule change that happened last season where if a raider goes off the mat, then the defenders who follow him are not going to be deemed out. But according to the old rule, if a raider went off the mat, if someone was dashed off the mat and the defenders who follow him are also completely off the mat, then they will also be considered out. On this basis, India was asking for 4 points to be awarded. But Iran said that because Amir Hossain Bastami had stepped out, it should be 1 point deducted for them. And Pawan being dashed out means 1 point deducted for India as well. Initially, there was some chat among the umpires, obviously, because this was a contentious decision. They were trying to check if Amir Hossain Bastami had taken part in the tackle, which would then rule him out in case he had, given that his foot had stepped out of the mat anyway. After a lot of conversation, one of the referees came out and deemed 1-1 to each team, which the Indians furiously protested against. They were speaking about how so many of them had followed Pawan. So according to the old rule, it should ideally mean that these guys come out, right? It should mean that the points go to India. While, the logistics of this are all right, they were contesting rules of the past with rules that are now being followed in popular Kabaddi. No one seemed to be clear about what the actual rule really was, or at least that's what it seems like for us watching on television. What followed was a very nasty 20-minute delay with the Indian coach, the Indian captain, Pawan. In fact, technically by that raid was off the mat, but he kept coming back on and arguing with the referees. And we also saw the Indian coach, Edicheri Bhaskaran, constantly talking to the referees, saying that this is not the rule, this is not the rule. The decision was contested about 3-4 times. After the call was made on the mat, the referee went back to the technical officials and the jury, and they tried to look back at the entire thing all over again. The decision was looked back at least 3 times. When the delay happened, and then when the referee came back and said 3 points to India, 1 to Iran, the Iranian team, which was quite up until then, they were going up and expressing their displeasure. They weren't shouting down at the referees at least. And their coach, Ghulam Reza, was seated on his bench. He had not gotten up. He had already gotten a green card before. They started protesting, saying that's not how it is. I'm assuming that they were vouching for a touch, given that Pawan was dashed off. A lot of confusion ensued, and administrative officials of Asian Kabaddi had to then come down and speak to the referees and tell them that this is what the rule is. Now, obviously, we have to see what happens. At the moment, the match is suspended. But as it stands, the Indians sat on the mat in protest. They did not want to play any further part. After the final decision of 1-1 was awarded, the Indians chose not to come on, which is why the suspension happened eventually. What we do know now is we've been talking about Kabaddi going on to, sort of pitch itself to be an Olympic sport. But the optics of what has happened in the Hangzhou final, with the referees not being clear about what the rules are, with the referees having absolutely no control over the players on the mat, is not a great look for the sport. So, spirit of the game, all of that, all on one side. The actual technicalities of it seem to be very muddled up as far as this final is concerned. And it's actually quite sad given how this was the most anticipated fixture in Kabaddi of the Asian Games. People have been waiting for 4 years for this game. And to see it sort of go into a deadlock of this way is a little disappointing. But we will have updates for you about when the match resumes, if it resumes, what exactly happens after this. We'll be keeping a close eye. So for all the updates, please follow Sports Stars live blog and keep an eye on our channels for more information.